Welcome to this mini-series of the Smart Firefighting Podcast. Today, we're exploring the inaugural World Fire Congress hosted by the U.S. Fire Administration on May 7th and 8th, 2024 in Washington, D.C. This groundbreaking event unites global fire service leaders to address critical issues such as climate change impacts, emerging technology risk, and firefighter health and safety. Enjoy this three-part series as we hear from multiple stakeholders about the key takeaways and the exciting potential for future collaboration in the global fire service. We are here at the World Fire Congress alongside Mark Hardingham. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I think I'm doing better than I was yesterday because it's just nice to get the first day of the World Fire Congress out of the way, and we're lunchtime on day two, and it's gone really well. So I've come out of the slightly apprehensive mode and now in the much more confident mode, reflecting back and looking forward to the final session this afternoon.
Yeah, even just reflecting on day one and hearing all the different perspectives and the nuances and hearing that even in different languages, we have the similar problems around the world. We're all not that different, which was fascinating. But from your perspective, I'd love to know kind of why are we here? Why did the World Fire Congress come to life, and why is it more important than ever that this event happened?
Yeah, I'm going to start by giving credit to Dr. Laurie, because I genuinely think we're here because of Dr. Laurie. But actually it started before then, because when I came into the role I've got now, which sort of chairs an organisation that sits over every UK fire and rescue service, I started doing a lot of work with colleagues in the EU, in the US, in Canada, South America, Australia, the Middle East. And what was quickly apparent is every time I went to a conference or a meeting in those places, the agenda was exactly the same as the agenda is in the UK. And the challenges are exactly the same. And everybody, to an extent, is trying to solve them within their own nation, within their own structures. So we're here today because we need to share more broadly across the world. The world is a smaller place than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And the way we work now means it's much, much easier to share stuff across borders. And if the last day has shown us nothing else, it's shown us that we have the opportunity to do that. We just need to create the environment for people to come together.
Well said. And I think that's been one of the most important things I've heard of this push towards communities of action and sharing knowledge. And what do you hope happens after this? I mean, I always kind of think about these events, or what are you going to do different on Monday? What do you hope is some of the positive ripple effects, domino effect from the World Fire Congress?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I made a point at the start when I was talking about the communities of practice that there's a risk sometimes that people come to these events full of enthusiasm and enjoy the event, and then they go back into their role in whatever country they're in, where they are dealing with lots of pressing issues, day-to-day challenges, and quite quickly the event fades into the background and you don't really think about it until the next event comes around in 2 years' time. So I think the point both Laurie and I have made is that people need to be active after we break and we close the conference later on this week. And what we've done, and US colleagues will be facilitating it for the next 2 years, is establish these communities of practice. And that is the mechanism through which every nation here will have the opportunity to engage with those communities of practice. It shouldn't be overly burdensome, and they'll be able to share, talk about their own perspectives, but equally receive what others have shared and listen to what others are talking about from their perspectives as well. And then to turn that into action in your own organisation. It might be something really small. It might be something quite significant. And then we'll bring that back into the next conference in 2026.
So for those that weren't here at the World Fire Congress, they're listening later and they're learning about these communities of practice, whether if their country wasn't represented here or they want to get involved. How do they get involved within the communities of practice moving forward? Yeah,
so I think what's going to happen is now the conference is closed, everybody who has been here has had the opportunity to decide which, maybe all of the communities of practice they want to join in. And then colleagues in the US Fire Administrator will set those up and host those. And Laurie committed on day one that within a month, those communities of practice will be up and running. They'll be online, so people will be able to engage with them anywhere across the world. And I think inevitably what will happen is that they'll grow. And countries who weren't able to come to this World Fire Congress, but will be interested in coming to the next one in 2026, will be able to join into those communities of practice and start to get engaged from, in a month's time.
So it's May 2024, and you've thrown out the word 2026 now. So what is this roadmap to 2026? What can we expect, and what should we be thinking about in this 2026 roadmap?
Yeah, well, the roadmap started a year ago, because it was a year ago that Dr. Laurie, myself, and a number of other international colleagues sat around the table at the Metro Fire Chiefs Conference and came up with this idea of the World Fire Congress. And the intention then was that it wouldn't be a one-off event, and it would continue. And being realistic, it would continue once every 2 years. And in between that, we'd have the communities of practice. And then there are other conferences and events that happen. So World Fire Congress delegates will inevitably meet at some of those other international events to continue the conversation. So the plan is there'll be one in 2026, there'll be one in 2028, there'll be one in 2030. And whoever co-hosts the event, which I'm co-hosting this year, then becomes the host for the next event in 2026. So the rather daunting task of following the fantastic event that's taken place here will fall on the National Fire Chiefs Council in the UK to host countries from around the world in 2026, and that'll be here before we know it.
It will be here before we know it, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to that, but between now and then, it's really the time to roll up the sleeves and get to work.
Yeah.
Like you said, communities of practice and putting it to action. What's something that's surprised you from your time here so far, and maybe something that's kind of caught you by surprise or just kind of made you think, oh, wow, I never thought about that?
That's a great question. I'm going to pick two things. And I do that looking across the table at colleagues from Ecuador who've spoken several times during the conference. And I think we've got 4 challenge themes here. But what's come across quite significantly, and might be a theme that we take into 2026, is the role of the increasing impact of terrorism, conflict, and I'm talking about war and crime on the Fire and Rescue Service in different parts of the world, where firefighters are increasingly getting drawn into or suffering the consequences of those happening. And there's no protocol around that. There's no guidance around that. But actually, if that's a theme, there's something that we can collectively come together and share experiences and ideas around that. So that would be one. The second thing is that it's really good at these sessions to get some disagreement in the room, because there's a risk sometimes you come together and you quickly come to a consensus and everybody agrees with one another. And I've been pleased, and I know Laurie has as well, that there are colleagues in the room who are prepared to put their hand up and offer a perspective that's quite different to the rest of the group. And that's good, because that challenges the way we think, and it causes us potentially to think differently about how we do stuff. So that's a couple of things that stand out for me.
Yeah, a little bit of civil discourse is good. I mean, we are in Washington, D.C. after all.
Yeah, we have to agree, disagree, or disagreeably agree, I think is the term that's used.
Yeah, respectfully disagree, or whatever that phrase is. No, that's good. Well, I mean, like I said, it's May 2024, and we talked a little bit about the ripple effect, domino dynamics, but maybe even to just to cast a spotlight a little bit into the UK fire service. I mean, what are some of the unique challenges that the UK fire service faces that actually maybe we found out they aren't actually that unique? They're probably similar around the world, but maybe just from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing within the UK fire service right now?
Yeah, we're talking here, having just listened to Dr. Jen Taylor talk about culture and inclusion in fire and rescue services, and if I was to pick out the one thing that's having the most public attention, media attention and internal attention in fire and rescue services in the UK at the moment, it's about culture and inclusion. It's about the demographics of the workforce. It's about how do you create a unified workforce? What is the experience of people who are a minority in your fire and rescue service compared to the people who are the majority of the workforce in your fire and rescue service? So I'd say that would be one. And the second one I would pick out is 7 years ago, 72 people lost their lives at the Grenfell Tower fire. And we are probably only a few weeks, maybe a couple of months away from the national public inquiry that was set up by the government, that sat for many years and closed last year, are going to publish their final report into what happened. That's not just focused on the fire and rescue service, it's focused on the whole of the system that built, refurbished, managed that building. And then obviously when the fire service response, when it happened, that report is going to be a watershed moment for the fire and rescue service and many other organisations when it came out. I think it'll be a once in a career report for most people in the fire and rescue services. So those would be the two I would pick out.
What do you think that report will lead to?
it'll lead to change. It has to lead to change. If 72 people lost their lives, if nothing else, their legacy has to be a better built environment, a better system that supports the built environment, and it has to support a fire and rescue service who is better able, better prepared to deal with fires in tall buildings in those sets of circumstances. So it has to do one thing, and that's bring about change.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me know about that and elaborating on that, and from the other fire service members in the room, even hearing from Laura Kavanaugh from NYFD earlier, and there's different institutions around the world, like with what you're leading with the UK Fire Service and in New York and around here, where when you speak, the world listens. So I appreciate your leadership and what you're doing, and just your co-hosting and willing to host in 2026, because there's a lot of work to be done, but I think we can all agree that while there are problems, there's a lot of opportunities for unique solutions that can continue to showcase that the fire service is one of the best careers in the world, and that we can continue to protect lives and protect property and continue to have a vibrant, inclusive, diverse workforce within the fire service around the world.
Amen to that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark, for what you're doing, and look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks for listening to today's episode. What did you think? What did you learn? Hopefully something, right? Please reach out on social media with your thoughts on this episode and any other suggestions for future content. We look forward to capturing more important stories across public safety and are here at your service.